Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How y'all doing? And today's show is going to be about a recent visit I did to a very famous spiritualist camp here in Central Florida by the name of Cassadaga. Okay, now this spiritualist camp was started around the turn of the century, and it's still in existence today. As a matter of fact, at some point, it's even been considered the psychic capital of the world because the people that live in Cassadaga, it's a very small, basically, camp, are all spiritualist mediums. In other words, this is what they do for a living, and their lifestyle, how they identify themselves. And later on, I'm going to show you a video of a visit that I paid to the cemetery there, which is Lake Helen Cemetery. And also I visited the very famous Devil's Chair. But anyway, before I get into that, I wanted to give you some background, okay, about Cassadaga. There's a lot of people, they know that people go there, to get a reading from a medium or whatever the case might be. But it's really interesting what the background of this community is. Because as a matter of fact, for many, many years, even after they were established, as spiritualists, there were other people, outsiders, who considered that the people that lived in Cassadagas were witches, they worshiped the devil. A lot of misconceptions about what spiritualism is, just because they communicated with the dead, and their belief in the afterlife was different from what a lot of other religions had, as far as even now there's a lot of religions that consider that if you communicate with anybody that's deceased, basically you're communicating with demons. So yeah, they had to put up with that for many years. But anyway, let me give you a quick background on this really truly interesting community that they're very private, even though they welcome a lot of people there for readings and to visit a hotel. But and the truth is that the story of Cassadaga, it's very strange. It's shrouded in mystery, and it all started with a spirit guide by the name of Seneca, okay, and a boy by the name of George P. Colby. He was born in Pike, New York in 1848. And when he was a little boy, the family settled on 160 acres of land in a place called Forestville Township, Minnesota. And in the slides that you see, that picture of that man, that is two undated pictures of George Colby, obviously when he was an adult. Now, the area where they settled in, where the Colby family settled in, later became known as Cherry Grove in honor of his father and his orchard of cherry trees. Now, George, he lives on this farm with two brothers and two sisters, and unfortunately, but not, this was very common, unfortunately, back then, two of his sisters died at a young age. Now, because this is the mid-1800s when this happened. Now, during the winter of 1860, when George is 12 years old, he is baptized in a nearby lake. That, of course, being the middle of winter, they had to cut a hole in the ice in order to get to the water. And shortly after he had this baptism, George starts claiming that the spirit of his uncle is visiting him and telling him that he's a great psychic and that he is going to be the founder of a great spiritual center in the South. Now, during his teen years, George develops his mediumship, and this includes clairvoyance, spiritual readings, healing, and as a matter of fact, he is also goes into trances where his personal spirit guides come through. And his parents, which were both Baptist, were not too happy with what's happening with George, and subsequently they punished and beat him, I guess, trying to get him off this path. which is, there's nothing in the Baptist religion that that has this as part of their belief system. So in 1867, George, he breaks away from the church and he begins a life as a medium. And he goes from state to state, doing private readings and what they call parlor seances. Now remember, around this time is also when spiritualism takes up. This is right after the end of the Civil War. As a matter of fact, on the slides you're going to see a picture of the Fox sisters, who became very, very famous for the spiritualism, or people see them as one of the first devout spiritualists, or what got that religion or that movement started. Now, throughout his travels, George takes whatever payment his clients think that's fair. So basically what that means is, along the way, he needs to take like regular jobs just in order to survive. Now, remember, he's basically burned his bridges with his family because he did not stay away from the mediumship. So, but like all things, he gets word of mouth, word travels around that what his talent is, and he begins to get some fame as a test medium. And that, of course, what people most of the times want when they contact a medium is to contact the deceased relative, and that's exactly what he was doing with very good accuracy. And like I said, he had several spirit guides. The most famous of which was a Native American named Seneca, okay, who he said spoke to him during a seance in Lake Mills, Iowa. And now this guide, Seneca, told him he's supposed to go on a great journey, but that he must first visit the home of a T.D. Giddings in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So George goes off to Wisconsin and he meets a spiritualist there named Theodore Giddings, who gives him other instructions, like sends him on his way. And he's told, that he's saying that Seneca's telling him, you need to travel, but I want you to go down to Florida with the Giddings family, and to get a piece of land selected by the Congress of Spirits as a spiritualist center. I hope you all see where this is going. So off goes George with the Giddings family. They go first to Jacksonville and then on to Blue Springs Landing. And after that, George leaves on foot into this piney or pineland woods near Volusia County, just north of where Deltona is presently situated. And he finds a place that later becomes the home of the Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association. Now, he's the person, okay, that basically acquires the land for the camp, builds a house there, but he didn't live there full time though, because he had very poor health, but the Florida climate, obviously it helped him out. I guess when he was up north, it was much colder down in Florida where it's hot most of the time. That helped him enough so that he starts touring the country again as a test medium and a lecturer and a spiritualist leader. Now, fast forward to December of 1894, okay, and charter is formed for the Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp. And there's two people that were very important in forming this association, which is E.W. Bond and Marion Skidmore. And what they do is they apply for materials to build many of the original structures in the camp. Now later on, I'm going to take you on a little tour through the streets of present-day Cassadaga, where a lot of those turn-of-the-century houses are still standing, including one that's the Ann Stevens house that you see there. It's a very beautiful, it's been renovated. It's a blue house you're going to see in the slides. Now, Skidmore becomes known as Mother of the Camp. Now, they both came from the Lilydale Assembly. This is a spiritual camp up in New York, where a lot of the original members of Cassadaga came from. And I've been there myself. Now, it was Skidmore's idea to name the camp after Cassadaga Lake, which is near the Lilydale camp. And this word, as a matter of fact, comes from the Seneca Indians, meaning rocks beneath the water. All right. Now, in the meantime, you have to understand this is George, he's visiting the camp on and off for the rest of his life, and he serves as the camp spiritual leader and lecturer. And he's involved with it. He puts on plays. He grows citrus in the area, which of course Central Florida is very famous for. And as a matter of fact, he adopts and educates several children throughout his lifetime. And he returns back to Cassadaga in 1933 because his health is really getting bad. And there he has a place to live. And, they look after him, and he just finally passes away on July 27th, 1933. Whether he was, fulfilling all the prophecies that had come to him from his spirit guide. Now, right now, Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp is the largest spiritualist community in the southern United States. As a matter of fact, also Lilydale up in New York is still there. And like I said, the camp mediums, in order to live there, whether you're a healer, whatever, they're required to follow the bylaws of the association. Okay, and a person can purchase a home within the camp. Okay, but the association maintains ownership of the land. So in other words, if you're a homeowner, basically you're a camp member. All right. So in other words, they have certain bylaws that you have to abide by if you want to live there. All right. Now, one of the main buildings is the Andrew Jackson Davis building, which at one time served as the camp's recreation hall and now is the camp's bookstore and information center. There's also the Harmony Hall, Brigham Hall, the Caesar Foreman Healing Center, and the Colby Memorial Temple. Okay, and also the Summerland House, which houses the camp's offices. Now, I stayed myself at the Cassadaga Hotel, and as a matter of fact, I have another video which shows a mini ovulus session. I'm sorry, not a mini ovulus with a dowsing rod session that I did inside the room of the Cassadaga Hotel. If you want to take a look at that, there was a lot of interesting things that went on with that. Okay, now, it's really important that right now the Cassadaga Hotel is not associated with the Spiritualist camp. And as a matter of fact, the hotel that's there right now, even though it's been there for quite a long time, it is not the original hotel. Okay, now the first hotel was owned by a lady by the name of Emma Huff. And that structure burned to the ground on Christmas night of 1926. And they reconstructed it, and it was completed in 1928. Now, right on the heels of that completion comes the Great Depression, and the camp lost ownership of the hotel, and it was sold to private owners. Now, during the 1990s, it was sold again and renovated, and now in the downstairs they have a what's called Sinatra's Restaurant, which is a little hotel restaurant, and they have a coffee bar. As a matter of fact, they served a great breakfast. I had a great conversation there with a girl, Jessie, that was working there. And of course, they have psychic readings, seances, and meditations where they come to the hotel and they do their reading for you instead of you actually going to the medium or the psychic's house. All right, now, the hotel also claims to be haunted by friendly spirits. And as a matter of fact, they even have supposedly children's spirits there. Very, very picturesque, a very beautiful, even though very basic kind of hotel. And one of the most popular ghost stories with it is that the hotel's resident ghost, which is named Arthur, who's supposed to be of Irish descent, is that he supposedly resided in the hotel during his lifetime, and he was known to drag a chair to the end of the hall to look out the windows. And now guests have claimed that they have a brief glimpse of Arthur at the end of the hall or caught a lingering smell of gin and cigars, which he was very fond of when he was alive. Okay, now, like I said, when I was there, it's beautiful furnishings, and it's atmospheric, and yeah, that was my cockatiel. Anyway, there's another house also that also has tours and is supposed to be haunted, which is the Ann Stevens house. And it's just located down the street from the Cassadaga Hotel. All right, and it used to house the camp visitors. It was built in 1895 by a lady by the name of Ann Stevens, who would come there every winter. She was very wealthy. She would come and stay the winters there. And as a matter of fact, she bought that house directly from George Colby. And she helped him fund his lecture tours when he was touring. And she also served as director of the Camp Association for several years, and like I said, ran that boarding house for the visitors. And right now, presently, it's a 10-room bed and breakfast. And as a matter of fact, I believe they have ghost tours, like when you stay there and so forth. Okay, now some people believe that Cassadaga exists within a kind of spiritual vortex. In other words, where the veil between the worlds and the spirit world is very thin. Okay, could be because of all the psychics, all the seers, all the people that just come through there trying to make contact with the other side. It could be considered even like a supernatural Mayberry. All right, it's very small but very interesting, and I'm gonna go ahead and take you off to my visit to the cemetery, which is very, very close to Cassadaga proper. And you're going to see it's quite interesting. And then I'll show you like a little ride around the streets, very, very scenic little streets that make up Cassadaga, which is quite a spooky place. Beautiful, but very spooky.
Hi everybody, it's Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural, and I'm here in Cassadaga, Lake Helen Cemetery. This is in Central Florida, and this is right outside the actual town of Cassadaga, which is a spiritualist camp that's been here in Central Florida since like the turn of the century. As a matter of fact, I just stayed overnight at the hotel and I did a separate show, as a matter of fact, a live show on dowsing rod mini ovulus session that I did in the room, which was really interesting. But anyway, like everything, of course, you would think not only is it a cemetery, it's a haunted cemetery because it sits right on the outskirts, maybe less than a couple of miles away from a spiritualist camp. And one of the things that I came here to see, which is that there supposedly is what they call the Devil's Chair, and I think it's that one back there, which is supposedly a grave site that was made for a man whose wife and child had passed away, and he had it built so he could come and visit with his deceased family. And I guess after the years, it's gotten this reputation of extreme hauntings. Obviously, when it's gotten that name of the Devil's Chair, I think part of it might be urban myth. Let's face it, it's sitting in the middle of a cemetery. So, but anyway, let's find out. I've got the mini ovulus already running, and let's see what comes up. And I think it's really funny that, considering that it's that we're in the middle of a cemetery, and I haven't gotten not a peep. But let's see, And like I said earlier, sometimes the middle of the day, especially when you come on a weekday when there's, as a matter of fact, we are the only ones here. And it's very still. All you've got is just regular daytime noises of insects. You'd be surprised what you can capture. And I've said this before in other shows. Everybody, of course, is pursuing that nighttime or midnight or witching hour moment to capture paranormal evidence or get scared. You'd be surprised what you come across in the middle of the daytime, especially like this when there's nobody around. Okay? And the reason why I say that also is, believe it or not, there are some ghosts, especially if we're talking an intelligent haunting, which they kind of hightail it. They kind of make themselves scarce when there's a lot of people running around trying to capture evidence. And secondly, which I mentioned this in another show, if you've got an intelligent haunting, but you've got somebody that's trapped, a lot of them kind of revisit or follow the routines of when they were alive. Okay? And for most people, right now, it's a little bit right after noontime. This is when most people were awake doing whatever it was they were doing. If you were a farmer, if you were a housewife, if you were a man that was working, if you were a kid, this is when you were active. And human beings, which are creatures of habit, a lot of us, when we go on to the other side and we're earthbound and we're on that cycle, we kind of repeat our activities and our timelines. That's why I'm saying that this daytime hours, you'd be surprised what you can find as far as active hauntings, because you sometimes will capture activity, because these spirits are basically redoing or active at the time. In other words, they didn't get the memo about, hey, you only come out at night and scare people. You know, especially if they're trapped in this cycle of trying to live a life which they don't have a regular or physical body for anymore. But they're desperately trying to do that. That's why sometimes they're earthbound. But anyway, I think this is the devil's chair. I'm telling you guys, not a peep from the ovulus. That speaks volumes. I don't know. I think this is last name of Thatcher. Okay. Mary Thatcher, 1838. And the other one is Thatcher Ethel, passed away in 1920 something. I'm not sure if this is it, because I'm going to go back there, because you can see, as I remember correctly, I think I had seen it, the little sitting area. I believe it's that one back there, because it didn't have a backing. It was like this, made of brick. Okay, let's see. Let's take a look back there. Let's see if the devil's chair lives up to its name. So scary. But anyway, let's see. Let's see if anybody else wants to make an appearance. By all means, do it. You know, let's see if we can get somebody to either contact us with the ovulus, or again, guys, if you hear, see anything, let me know. You can contact me on Facebook or directly on my website. Oh, this is interesting. Here we've got, this is great. Here we've got a gravesite with a cup of water, okay? And a lot of people that are familiar with the spirit world, they use the water, the clear water that is, as a way of cleansing, purification, lightening, drawing away, in other words, elevating the spirit or anything having to do with that family. This is the last name of Clarkson, and it looks, I guess this is their family plot. So it's, whether it's the family or somebody that's decided to be the ones to look after their plot, that cup of water that was put out here today, it's almost full to the brim. So somebody was either, maybe it was one of the psychics or one of the spiritualists, got a communication from this family telling, hey, can you do that for us? You know, they got some type of, maybe they're not directly related per se, but they got that communication. Let's see if this is it. Okay. All right, yeah, this one, and it might be the same thing, or they're family related. This is, again, the last name of Thatcher, like the other ones. Let's see, and this is George Thatcher, passed away in 1872. And Orestes Thatcher passed away in 1913. This might be it, possibly the same family. Okay, maybe it was just his wife that had passed away. Let's see. Okay. And, oh, and one of the things that they say is that supposedly, if you leave a can of beer out here, like let's say tonight, let's say if you left in the evening, you come back and it's been drunk. I'm thinking, man, maybe somebody jumped. I don't know, those urban myths kind of things, like. And I don't know. Usually, when it's hot. We're talking July here in Central Florida. It's really hot and humid. I don't know if you can tell, but right now there's like not a drop of wind. Even so, I've had enough experiences that when you do have some type of spiritual activity, even on the hottest days, you feel it. You feel a chill. You feel a tingle down your spine. You can even get goosebumps as hot as it is right now. And I'm not feeling that right now. I'm not feeling that right now. And my mini ovulus is going, like nobody wants to communicate. All right, let's see. Oh, and I love, down in South Florida where I'm at in Miami, For some reason, Spanish moss does not do well, even though I'm trying to find them. But I love it here in Central Florida. Spanish moss is all over. I mean, it gives it a really creepy look, but besides that, it looks really nice, and I can hear thunder far off. So, you know, this area, like all of Florida, has a lot of afternoon thunderstorms. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Lee Baker, Mary, wife of Lee Baker. They were both born in 1842, and yeah, they were quite elderly. She passed away in 1923, and he passed away like a year later, which is not uncommon. You know, you see a lot of couples that have been together for like a while. They don't kind of outlive each other that much. Let's see. You could tell, 1923. Okay, just a few years after World War I. Let's see. As you could tell, this is a pretty big cemetery. Okay, and even so, there's still plenty of space for a lot more burials. And the point I'm trying to make is just to give you an idea of how sparsely populated this area is. Usually you go to any other larger area or more populated area, and when you have burials this far back, it's full. You know, it's a closed cemetery. And this cemetery has recent burials and space for plenty more. So living out here back in those days must have been a very, you know, you had to talk about self-sustaining, all right? And the reason why I bring this up also is, especially when you do a lot of these visits to the cemeteries, you find a lot of people dying, children dying, young people dying, and it's kind of sad. But then you think back then when you don't have a hospital, you didn't have an emergency room, you didn't have fire rescue, people would die very easily from accidents, from a snake bite, because there just wasn't any help. You lived out in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, you're lucky if maybe you had a doctor in town, but if it was an emergency, chances are that they didn't have enough time to save that person. So you do see that a lot in some of the older grave sites where people would just die young, you know. Sometimes disease or illness. Again, we don't have a lot of the inoculations or the medicines or treatments that we have now. So, you know, and like you could tell, you know, these were a lot of families that lived in this area. Like for this, the Corgals, they're all here. I mean, they have a guy, James, died in 1946. James died in 1975, probably his son. And Adeline Corgal passed away in 1983. You know, same family. And you know what? Considering how transient we are in our society, I know this sounds like a weird word to use, but I think it's charming in a way when you see families that have stayed together, that they even have they're buried together, you know, even years apart. And as you could tell, there's a lot of these, not all of them, but some of these are enclosed, where you could tell that basically they're demarcating a family plot. Let's see. This one is Todd, okay, T-O-D-D. And it looks like, yeah, the William and Emma passed away back in the 1930s. Okay, so, yeah, you've got a lot of, again, I'm telling you guys, this is really weird. Not a peep out of the ovulus, and I don't feel anything. So let's see if I can catch anything else. I'll talk to you guys later.